The 1970s produced some of the most honest war movies ever made. These films were darker, they were more personal, they showed the confusion, fear, and moral conflict that real soldiers often experienced in battle. Many of them slowly faded from public memory, yet veterans still talk about them today. In this countdown, we uncover 14 powerful war films from the 1970s that many veterans say deserve to be remembered and watched again. Number 14, Too Late the Hero, 1970. War movies in the 1970s were changing fast. The heroic speeches and marching music of earlier decades were fading. In their place came darker stories that felt closer to the truth many soldiers remembered. One of the earliest signals of this shift was Too Late the Hero. Ours directed by Robert Aldrich, this film takes place in the Pacific during the Second World War. A small group of British soldiers and one reluctant American officer are sent on a secret mission behind Japanese lines. What makes the film stand out is its refusal to glorify combat. The soldiers are frightened, they are tired, they make mistakes. Their mission quickly collapses into chaos as they try to survive in hostile jungle terrain. Cliff Robertson plays the American officer who wants nothing more than to avoid fighting, yet finds himself forced into leadership. Michael Caine appears as a hardened British sergeant who has already accepted the brutal rules of war. Veterans often praise the film because it captures the feeling of being trapped in a mission that no longer makes sense. Even the jungle becomes a suffocating prison where fear grows with every step. By the end, the film leaves viewers with a haunting question. When the mission is pointless and survival is uncertain, what does courage really mean? Number 13, Catch-22, 1970. At first glance, Catch-22 looks like a strange entry on a list of war films. It is filled with absurd moments and dark humor. Yet many veterans believe it reveals a truth about war that few movies dare to show. Directed by Mike Nichols and based on Joseph Heller's famous novel, the film follows Captain Yossarian, a bombardier stationed on a Mediterranean island during World War II. The nightmare of Yossarian's life is not just enemy fire, it is the endless bureaucracy of the military system. Commanders keep raising the number of missions he must fly before he can go home. The rules make no sense. The infamous Catch-22 states that any pilot who is crazy can be grounded. But if he asks to be grounded, that proves he is sane enough to keep flying. Through surreal comedy, the film exposes the madness that many soldiers feel when orders come from distant offices rather than the battlefield. Alan Arkin plays Yossarian with growing desperation as each mission feels more pointless than the last. Decades later, veterans still recommend Catch-22 because beneath its strange humor lies a disturbing truth. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy in war is the system itself. Number 12, Kelly's Heroes, 1970. Kelly's Heroes begins like a traditional war film, but quickly turns into something far stranger. Set during World War II, the story follows a group of American soldiers who discover a secret. Ice behind German lines sits a bank filled with millions of dollars in gold bars. Instead of reporting the information, they decide to steal it. Clint Eastwood leads the group as Private Kelly, a calm and calculating soldier who sees an opportunity no one else notices. Alongside him are a colorful cast of characters, including Donald Sutherland as Oddball, a laid-back tank commander who seems more like a hippie than a soldier. The mission becomes a bizarre journey through occupied France as the men dodge both German forces and their own command structure. Tanks roll forward not for victory, but for a heist. The result is a war film unlike anything audiences had seen before. Many veterans appreciate Kelly's Heroes because it quietly mocks the idea that war is always about noble causes. The soldiers are not chasing glory. They are chasing gold and perhaps a way to escape the madness around them. By blending humor with battlefield action, the film suggests a simple idea. When soldiers lose faith in the mission, they begin creating their own reasons to survive. Number 11, Force 10 from Navarone, 1978. In the 1970s, audiences still loved large-scale World War II adventures, yet many of those films carried a darker tone than earlier decades. Force 10 from Navarone is a perfect example. The movie acts as a sequel to the famous 1961 film, The Guns of Navarone, but it approaches the story with a more complex view of warfare. The film follows Allied commandos sent on a dangerous mission deep inside Nazi-occupied Yugoslavia. Their objective is simple on paper, but deadly in practice. They must destroy a strategic bridge before German forces can use it to crush a resistance movement. Leading the team is Major Keith Mallory, played by Robert Shaw. Alongside him is a younger officer played by Harrison Ford, who must prove himself in the brutal environment of covert operations. What begins as a straightforward sabotage mission quickly turns into a web of uncertainty. The commandos discover that not everyone fighting the Germans can be trusted. Rival resistance groups are battling each other as fiercely as they fight the enemy. Suddenly, the mission becomes more dangerous than anyone expected. Veterans often appreciate Force 10 from Navarone because it shows the confusion of wartime alliances. War is not always a simple clash between two sides. Political tensions, mistrust, and conflicting loyalties can turn even allies into rivals. The film builds toward a spectacular final act involving explosives, collapsing bridges, and desperate last stands. Yet beneath the action lies a deeper message. Victory in war often depends not only on courage, but on navigating the fragile relationships between those who claim to fight for the same cause. Number 10. Hanover Street, 1979. Hanover Street tells a very different kind of war story. Instead of focusing on large battles, the film explores the emotional lives of the people caught inside wartime London. Harrison Ford stars as David Halloran, an American pilot flying dangerous bombing missions over Nazi-occupied Europe during the Second World War. While stationed in Britain, Halloran begins a passionate romance with Margaret Sellinger, a married British nurse played by Leslie Ann Down. Their relationship grows quickly against the backdrop of air raid sirens and nightly bombing missions. In wartime, every moment feels uncertain, and emotions run deeper than usual. The complication arrives when Halloran is assigned a secret intelligence mission across enemy territory. His partner on the operation turns out to be Margaret's husband, Paul Sellinger, played by Christopher Plummer. The two men must work together to survive a dangerous journey through occupied France while neither knows the truth about their connection. Veterans often respond strongly to Hanover Street because it captures the emotional complexity of life during war. Soldiers were not only fighters. They were people who loved, worried, and struggled with moral choices while facing the possibility of death. The film reminds viewers that war affects every part of human life. Even relationships become entangled with duty, loyalty, and sacrifice. By the end, the characters must decide what truly matters when the world around them is collapsing. Number 9. The Boys from Company. C. 1978. The Vietnam War created a new generation of war movies that rejected traditional heroism. The Boys from Company C is one of the earliest films to show the conflict through the eyes of young soldiers who barely understand why they are fighting. The story follows a group of Marine recruits as they endure harsh training before being sent into Vietnam. At first, the men approach military life with humor and bravado. As the training grows more intense, their confidence slowly begins to crack. Once deployed to Vietnam, the soldiers face a harsh reality far removed from the patriotic speeches they once believed. Jungle patrols become exhausting tests of endurance. Command decisions often appear disconnected from the dangers on the ground. The men gradually realize that survival may depend more on luck than strategy. Veterans often highlight this film because it reflects the confusion many young soldiers experience during the war. Instead of portraying flawless heroes, the movie shows frightened young men trying to navigate a conflict that rarely makes sense. By the end, The Boys from Company C delivers a sobering portrait of a generation sent into a war that changed them forever. Number 8. Johnny Got His Gun, 1971. War stories often celebrate victory. They show soldiers charging across battlefields with courage and determination. Johnny Got His Gun does the exact opposite. This film removes every illusion about glory and replaces it with a single terrifying question. What happens to a soldier when the war takes everything from him? The story follows Joe Bonham, a young American soldier wounded during the First World War. When he regains consciousness inside a military hospital, he slowly discovers the unimaginable truth. His arms are gone, his legs are gone, his face has been destroyed. He cannot see, he cannot hear, he cannot speak. Joe is alive, but trapped inside his own mind. Director Dalton Trumbo tells the story through Joe's memories and thoughts. Flashbacks show the simple life he once had with family and friends before the war shattered it forever. Inside the hospital, the doctors treat him like a medical experiment rather than a human being. They keep him alive without realizing he is fully conscious. Veterans have often pointed to this film as one of the most brutally honest depictions of war ever made. Instead of showing combat, the movie focuses on the lifelong consequences that follow a soldier home. Joe's silent struggle becomes a haunting symbol of every soldier who returned from war carrying invisible wounds. The film ends with a message that lingers long after the screen fades to black. War does not always kill you. Sometimes it leaves you alive in a prison far worse. Number 7. Murphy's War, 1971. Some war stories are about great battles between armies. Murphy's War is different. It tells the story of a single man whose personal war refuses to end even when the world around him begins to move on. The film stars Peter O'Toole as Murphy, a quiet merchant sailor whose ship is sunk by a German submarine during the final days of the Second World War. Murphy survives the attack, but the destruction leaves him deeply scarred. His crewmates are gone. The war should be nearly over. Yet one thought begins to consume him. The submarine that destroyed his ship must be destroyed in return. Stranded in the remote jungles of South America, Murphy begins a relentless hunt for the enemy vessel. Along the way, he meets a small group of unlikely allies, including a mysterious doctor, played by Sian Phillips, who tries to convince him that revenge will only lead to more destruction. Murphy refuses to listen. The war has become personal. The film slowly transforms into a tense psychological battle between obsession and survival. Murphy repairs an old aircraft and prepares for a desperate attack against the submarine hidden deep within a river channel. The jungle setting adds an eerie atmosphere where the war feels distant yet impossible to escape. Veterans often connect with Murphy's War because it captures a truth many soldiers understand. When the fighting ends, the memories do not disappear. Some battles continue long after the guns fall silent. Peter O'Toole delivers one of his most intense performances as a man who cannot let go of the violence he has witnessed. Murphy believes destroying the submarine will bring closure, but the film quietly suggests another possibility. Revenge may only deepen the scars war has already carved into the soul. By the final moments, Murphy's War reveals a tragic insight. Sometimes the hardest war a soldier fights is the one that continues inside his mind. Number 6. The McKenzie Break, 1970. During World War II, thousands of German prisoners were held in camps across Britain. Most films treat these camps as quiet footnotes to the larger war. The McKenzie Break turns that forgotten chapter into a tense and dangerous story of loyalty, deception, and survival. The film takes place inside a Scottish prisoner of war camp, where captured German officers are being held. At first, the camp appears calm. The prisoners follow strict routines. Guards patrol the fences. Yet beneath the surface, a hidden conflict is unfolding. Some prisoners remain fiercely loyal to Nazi ideology, while others have begun questioning the cause they once served. May Brian Keith plays Captain Jack Connor, the tough British officer assigned to maintain order. Connor quickly realizes the camp contains a dangerous secret network of prisoners planning a daring escape. Leading them is Captain Schluter, played by Helmut Greim, a charismatic officer determined to continue fighting for Germany, even from inside captivity. What follows is a gripping battle of intelligence and strategy. Connor attempts to infiltrate the escape network, while the prisoners work to outsmart their captors. The tension grows with every passing day, as loyalty and betrayal collide inside the barbed wire walls. Veterans often praise the film because it explores a side of war rarely shown on screen. Not every soldier fights on the battlefield. Some fight quiet wars of information, discipline, and patience. The psychological duel between Connor and Schluter becomes just as intense as any firefight. The McKenzie Break also examines the moral complexity of wartime prisoners. Some remain devoted to the regime that sent them to war, while others simply want the conflict to end. Inside the camp, ideology becomes another weapon. By the end, the film delivers a powerful reminder. Even when soldiers are removed from the battlefield, the war still finds ways to continue shaping their lives. Number 5. Overlord, 1975. Some war films try to impress audiences with spectacle. Explosions fill the screen, heroic speeches echo through the battlefield. Overlord chooses a very different path. It tells the story of one ordinary soldier and quietly reveals how small a single life can feel inside the enormous machinery of war. The film follows Tom Beddoes, a young British recruit preparing for the invasion of Normandy during the Second World War. Tom is not a hero. He is not a fearless warrior. He is simply a young man pulled from civilian life and placed into a uniform like thousands of others during the war. Director Stuart Cooper blends fictional scenes with real documentary footage from the war itself. This unusual technique creates an unsettling effect. The line between history and storytelling disappears. When Tom trains with other recruits, the viewer understands that countless real soldiers once stood in those same positions, facing the same uncertain future. As the story moves toward D-Day, the film becomes increasingly haunting. Tom writes letters home and dreams about the life he hopes to live after the war. Yet an eerie sense of fate surrounds him. He discovers a photograph of a dead soldier that looks strangely like his own future reflection. From that moment, the film begins to feel like a quiet march toward destiny. Veterans often admire Overlord because it captures the emotional experience of soldiers waiting for battle rather than the battle itself. Fear grows slowly. Conversations become more serious. Each recruit wonders if he will survive the coming invasion. When the Normandy landings finally begin, the chaos arrives without warning. In the confusion, Tom disappears into the violence just like thousands of real soldiers who fought that day. The film leaves viewers with a sobering truth. History remembers great victories, but for many soldiers, war was simply the moment when an ordinary life ended without ceremony. Number 4. Aces High, 1976. Fighter pilot movies often portray aerial combat as thrilling and heroic. Aces High removes that illusion and replaces it with a far darker reality. Set during the First World War, the film follows a group of British pilots stationed on the Western Front, where the sky has become one of the most dangerous battlefields on Earth. Malcolm McDowell plays Lieutenant Stephen Croft, a young officer who arrives at the squadron eager to prove himself in combat. He quickly discovers that life among fighter pilots is far from glamorous. Aircraft are fragile machines. Missions are deadly. Many pilots survive only a few weeks before being shot down. Leading the squadron is Major John Gresham, played by Christopher Plummer. Gresham maintains strict discipline while quietly struggling with the psychological toll of sending young pilots into near certain death. Every time a pilot fails to return from a mission, the burden grows heavier. The film carefully shows how war changes the men who fight it. At first, Croft believes courage and skill will protect him. After witnessing the loss of fellow pilots, he begins to understand the brutal randomness of aerial combat. Survival depends as much on luck as it does on bravery. Veterans often point to Aces High as one of the most honest portrayals of military leadership. Officers must inspire confidence while knowing that many of their men will never return. The emotional weight of command becomes one of the film's most powerful themes. The sky in Aces High is beautiful yet terrifying. Dogfights appear suddenly and end just as quickly. One moment, a pilot is flying beside his comrades. The next moment, his plane disappears in smoke. The film reveals the tragic cycle of war. New recruits arrive to replace the fallen, while the surviving pilots grow increasingly hardened. In the endless rotation of missions, the sky becomes a graveyard that never stops expanding. Number 3. The Eagle Has Landed, 1976. The Eagle Has Landed begins with a daring idea. During the Second World War, a group of German commandos is secretly sent to England with one impossible objective: kidnap the British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. Michael Caine plays Colonel Kurt Steiner, the disciplined German officer chosen to lead the mission. Steiner is not portrayed as a typical villain. Instead, the film shows him as a professional soldier who respects courage on both sides of the war. This unusual perspective gives the story a powerful sense of realism. The commandos secretly parachute into the English countryside, disguised as Polish troops. At first, their operation seems flawless. The quiet village where Churchill is expected to visit becomes the stage for an elaborate deception. Yet, as the plan unfolds, small mistakes begin to threaten everything. What makes the film memorable is its focus on the human side of the conflict. Steiner and his men develop unexpected connections with the villagers they meet. Meanwhile, British intelligence slowly begins to uncover clues that something unusual is happening. Veterans often admire the film because it avoids simple good versus evil storytelling. That its soldiers on both sides are shown as individuals trapped inside a war much larger than themselves. Honor, courage, and tragedy appear in equal measure regardless of nationality. When the final confrontation arrives, the tension explodes into a desperate battle inside the village streets. The mission that once seemed brilliant collapses under the weight of reality. The Eagle has landed reminds viewers that war is rarely as clear as propaganda suggests. Even the enemy may carry the same fears, hopes, and sense of duty as the soldiers fighting against them. Number 2. The Inglorious Bastards, 1978. During the 1970s, international filmmakers often approached war stories with bold creativity. One of the most surprising examples came from Italy with the film The Inglorious Bastards, directed by Enzo G. Castellari. While the movie contains explosive action, it also carries a rebellious spirit that separates it from traditional war films. The story follows a group of American soldiers who escape from a military prison during the Second World War. Each man has been court-martialed for different crimes, ranging from insubordination to theft. Instead of returning to custody, the group becomes trapped behind enemy lines in Nazi-occupied France. Their situation grows even more complicated when a group of resistance fighters mistakes them for an elite Allied commando unit. Suddenly, the escaped prisoners find themselves involved in a dangerous mission to destroy a German rocket installation. What began as an attempt to avoid military discipline turns into a chance for redemption. The film stands out because its characters are far from perfect heroes. They argue with each other, question authority, and often behave like outlaws rather than soldiers. Yet when confronted with the brutality of the Nazi war machine, they slowly begin to fight with unexpected courage. Veterans sometimes appreciate the film for its unusual honesty about the personalities inside real military units. Not every soldier is a flawless patriot. Armies are made of individuals with complicated pasts and personal motivations. Despite its fast-paced action, the film contains moments that reveal the chaos of wartime survival. Alliances shift quickly, and danger can appear without warning. The characters learn that courage sometimes emerges from the most unlikely people. Over time, The Inglorious Bastards gained cult status among war movie fans. Its raw energy and unpredictable characters helped redefine what a war adventure could look like. Number 1. Cross of Iron, 1977. At the very top of this list stands one of the most intense war films ever made. Cross of Iron, directed by Sam Peckinpah, offers a brutal look at the Eastern Front during the Second World War, where German and Soviet forces fought some of the bloodiest battles in history. The story centers on Sergeant Rolf Steiner, played by James Coburn, a hardened German soldier who has survived countless battles against the Soviet army. Steiner cares little for Nazi ideology or military politics. His only concern is protecting the men under his command and surviving another day on the front lines. Opposing Steiner within his own army is Captain Stransky, played by Maximilian Schell. Stransky is obsessed with winning the prestigious Iron Cross medal and believes commanding Steiner's unit will bring him glory. Unlike Steiner, he has little understanding of the brutal reality of frontline combat. The clash between these two men becomes the emotional core of the film. Steiner represents the experienced soldier who has lost faith in the system, while Stransky symbolizes the ambitious officer chasing prestige. As Soviet forces close in, the tension between them grows increasingly dangerous. Peckinpah's direction presents war with relentless intensity. Explosions tear through trenches, soldiers struggle through mud and shattered landscapes. Every battle feels chaotic and terrifying, rather than heroic. Veterans often regard Cross of Iron as one of the most realistic portrayals of the soldier's experience. The film shows how survival becomes the only true objective once the violence begins. Ideology medals and propaganda lose their meaning when men are simply trying to stay alive. The film ends with a haunting sense of irony. In the madness of war, even victory can feel empty when so many lives have already been destroyed. War movies come and go, but the most powerful ones never truly disappear. These forgotten films remind us that behind every battle are human lives shaped by fear, sacrifice, and survival. If you discovered a film here that surprised you, share it with someone else, because some stories of war should never be lost.